you think it in a funny way, it just become interesting, and I think it make my it make my own life bolder than before, which is really funny.
Well, it's really funny.
And she got very well trained. If you don't tell other people, she is not easy to be tell from the everyone children. So I just want to share my experience, like,
Oh,
as in the aspect children's emotional and social support and language training, which is very important. Thanks to
oh,
the books, the children's books, they need a lot of reading and learning.
sure. To I don't know, also like
Yes.
community. Have you seen a movie that it's called Frank and Mary?
Oh yes, yes, exactly.
It's so beautiful. Also, when we were working with the team of the book,
Oh
um,
really? Amazing.
yeah, part
So
of
much.
my
Mm,
job was to look for what what was the content around the world, not just like in books, like written, because I don't know, children's books also like have this part of the visuals, of the visual part of the book. So I was like trying to develop I don't know, to for them to understand like how to develop a story.
mm.
Yeah, so I found this movie and it's so beautiful about
Oh,
Asperger.
yes, I like that. Yes, I read and I watch a lot of materials about that.
Yeah.
And to be frankly, in the children's book, both writing and drawing, I'm an amateur. I think I'm just come here to say something in the in the standing point of just an ordinary parent. Okay.
Mm. Yeah, but that's a very like important I don't like an important how do you say, like part of the story of
Yes, and I really hope that everyone could be more could be more have more interest in the special children, and I hope the children's books could help. Okay, that is.
yeah, there isn't like many books about it, I guess. I mean,
Uh,
for
yes.
example, in Spanish, children.
Yes, I think in to China. I really hope. Mm,
Adaptation on the of something that it's different and we just like deny it, or because we're too lazy to
to get into the society, getting to the class. That is what our parents should do. We cannot just wait and tell everyone just be tolerant. We should do something as well.
Yeah, sure. I think that tolerance, it's a difficult word.
Yes, especially when they are all just children. Yes.
Yeah.
Also children. Yes, they can be naughty. They can be themselves. So both of us should work hard on it, I think. Sorry, I will.
No, it's okay.
Oh, what did Steve, as it's deep night.
Yeah, my cat and my dog are like sleeping right now.
Oh,
yeah,
I wanted you to have both a cat and a dog. Oh,
yeah.
great.
And actually, like I was saying, it's Friday and we're really close to having our Independence Day.
Wow,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so it's really strange for me. I live in this like colonial town near downtown of the city, and I live in a small house that is really close to other houses, and they always have music, always. So right now it's like really strange that they aren't like listening to loud music and partying and laughing, because Mexicans are always like partying and laughing and dancing. Yeah, but it's really weird that right now they're like so silent.
I don't know what, but
yeah, that's like Mexican culture.
and I can know that today is IBBY. I need to be quiet.
Yeah,
the children sleeping. Maybe.
Yeah, everyone's sleeping. It's so strange. I mean, the neighbor next door's light is I don't know, it's on, but I think they went out, or maybe they're just like leave it there. Yeah, there's like also this Mexican I don't know if it's a tradition, but a Mexican technique we have to protect our houses, that if you're going to go out for a night, you leave your lights on so that people think that you are home.
Okay.
But you're not. Like, for example, on Christmas, you see a lot of houses with their lights on, and you don't know if they are in their houses or they went to a party and they're just leaving the lights on to protect their house, for example.
Does it for the safety?
Yeah, that's the way that they...
Yes, in China, some people recommend us to do that, but I think most of people are just too lazy to turn it on. But if the girls left alone, I think they would do that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's strange that the neighbor is quiet. It's okay, but it's strange on a Friday night.
Wow, but isn't it nice for you now?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be quiet.
I think Mexico is a very artistic country. I really want to go.
You
really
should
powerful.
totally come.
Yes, it's very beautiful.
It's really beautiful, and it's really, I mean, for me as an anthropologist, I mean, it's not common that there's an anthropologist working on books.
Yes,
because,
exactly. An ideal place for anthropologists.
No, because we're always like, I don't know, like working in different parts of our country with indigenous people. There's a lot of work on language, on cultural diversity. I mean, Mexico, it's really different from one place to another. Also, the Spanish really changes from one city to the other. And
just like China, yes, our language varies a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like words that for example, my city, it's in the center of the country. We are really close to Mexico City, so it's not that different. But if you go to the north part of the country, they also talk like with different words, and they like sing when they're talking. Like they talk like, hi, how are you? And
That sounds very lazy.
Yeah, it sounds like sort of lazy. And also the South, there are people that still speak Mayan, for example.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah, there are. And a lot of, I don't know, of varieties of that language still. And the food is amazing, and we always eat
It's amazing.
yeah, we always eat spicy food, spicy fries. We spice everything. I sometimes carry a can with chiles in my purse. I mean, with my makeup, and I carry like spicy sausage or something, because we cannot live without that. And also, I don't know, the day of the dead, it's also a nice tradition. The day of the dead, it's nice.
Исабель, Линцюань.
Yeah?
Мы можем начинать. Линцюань, пожалуйста, подготовьте свою презентацию.
What? Can we start?
Нет, нам нужна другая презентация. Нужна презентация Линцюань. Да.
То есть Isabel там тоже есть именно?
Hello. Hello, Li? Liu Linjuan? Hello, can you hear us? So you can start your presentation now. Are you ready with your presentation?
Yes, my presentation. Okay.
Yes, please start. We are ready, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. But I think Lucia is still sharing with us, so I cannot share my PPT now.
Okay, can I just stop sharing it?
Okay, I'll have a try.
Okay.
Да, спасибо, презентацию видно.
Okay, we can see your presentation. Thank you. You can start, please. Start.
Thanks for the organization and invitation of IBBY. Okay, thank you, Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen. It's really honor to be here. In my entire life, it has never occurred to me that I would be in such a grand conference and share my thoughts about children's books. Since I'm no expert in this field, not an insider either, at least before my daughter was born. I come here just because I'm a mother with a daughter who was always behind her peers, as my topic is how a child with Asperger syndrome benefits from reading. So what is Asperger? In fact, we can find so many explanations on books, movies, magazines, or internet. Some people say that they are talented, but also lagging behind. Maybe strong memory, but also difficult in study. Just think about it. The common explanations are always contradicting to each other. So I here dare to explain Asperger in a more simple and more personal way. That is, when the Asperger children are babies, they mostly have no tendency to focus on human behavior. As a result, they might have difficulty in imitating adults, which is the starting point of socialization. Then as they grow up, it will be really common for them to be not able to learn how to talk, to follow the social rules, or to communicate with people. Here, I want to show a painting as an example. Please look at the right side of the slide. So this is called Anna Godiner, a classic beauty painting. Most of us can feel the quietness and love flowing in the summer air here. As to the kindergarten children, most of them could already easily tell the relationship between the two ladies on the paper, their mother and daughter. A bigger child might tell more, such as they're going to water the flowers, or even the mother loves the girl. However, I used even because not all the kids could be able to give such answers. In my daughter's eyes, the very same painting might be very different. The first thing she will spot on the picture, of course, the watering can. Second, I think all the plants, and she will name every one of them. That might take a long, long time. Third, maybe other details, the brick fence, the bush, the bonnet, and so on and on. She could also spot the ladies, of course. However, it could be really, really confusing for her to tell why they're just standing there. She needs a whole set of systematic training to find out that a lady and a little girl could be mother and daughter, not to mention what they're going to do. That was just a little fraction of Asperger children's life. So after my child was born, she was always staying in her own world, and she showed no interest to anyone. She had a difficulty in following any language, and her favorite talk at the time was just counting, endlessly counting. So as these fractions accumulated, everyone was asking me, is there anything wrong with her? As I've got the certificate as a psychological counselor, in fact, the answer is just on the tip of my tongue. I could describe it with so many familiar words, ASD or Asperger, but these words really hurt. If you once had a child who was always behind everyone, these words just caused too much pain to utter. So please, in my following talk, I don't want to use these abbreviations anymore. I prefer to call these children the teenier, tinier kids. They're not slow and not behind, they're but tinier. Their mental maturity might be obviously younger than their peers, 2/3 in mental age. So they need extra language training, emotional and social support. So if we consider the children just as teenier, tinier, and younger, and the world is just too big for them and too difficult for them to understand and too confusing, we may understand better how much pain they're suffering. When they are told what to do, what they hear might like thundering, and any order would be too complicated, so they just don't know where to start. If something could be done in an instant for other kids, for the tinier kids, it should be divided into 5, 6, 7, or even more steps. So they were not able to embrace the world. Even we call them again and again, because there are at least 3 obstacles in front of these children. The first is to learn the human language. And second is to distinguish the emotions. And third, to get the social support. But how to solve these problems? That's why I'm here, to express not my experience, but my gratitude and respect to everyone here. Because I did something above my own ability in the past 5 years with the assistance of children's books, which was just an accident in the beginning. Because I come from China, but when my daughter was born, our family lived in Japan. As everybody knows, Chinese is one of the most difficult languages in the world. So I was so worried about that she couldn't be able to get her mother tongue. So I bought hundreds of children's books even before she was born. These books and the following ones guided me to walk through the valley of struggling. And that is also the reason I started to write a column 3 years ago to share my experience with many other parents who also had a tinier child. So let's talk about these 3 problems. First is how to distinguish and decode the human language. Because to the tinier kids, language is especially important. Language is something stable for them to grasp or follow in the rapidly changing world. However, the problem is they always focus on something different because they're viewing the world in a different way, which probably ends in a unique grammar or vocabulary that might explain why they are sometimes late talking. And to some kids, the problem is even more fundamental. That is not to learn the language, but to how to tell the difference between the human voice and the background noise. And that could be also the reason they have no reaction to any human speech at their early age. And at the time, my solution is rhyming. As my child was born, she just seemed to have no interest to any people. At that time, I was really at a loss. I'm a PhD in literature, but all of a sudden, all these complicated, skillful, big words I learned in university became so useless. We tried to talk or play with her, and we brought her to the children's center almost every day. We discussed with the experts, but most of these efforts ended in vain. But I can feel there was sometimes a faint sparkle in her eyes when she heard the repeating rhymes. So for every daily routine, I tried to write a rhyme. A rhyme for toothbrushing, a rhyme for face washing, for washing her hand, everything. And just repeat just at a time so that she could realize the connection among the human voice, the words, the language, and the actions. It was not easy as I'm no poet, but luckily I found a natural resource, a treasure chest of rhyming. That is the children's books. I read them to my baby on the daytime and I study them at night. The rhyming words, even to the tiny kids, they are different. They're so playful, they're colorful, they're bouncing on my tongue, they're echoing in my girl's eyes. Gradually, she started to recognize the human speech and she learned to talk just from repeating the lost rhyming word. Okay, second is how to identify the human emotions and express themselves. Because to talk is a good beginning, but new problems arose. To talk is not to communicate, as we all know. The feelings, the emotions, and the face expressions are all mystery to them, too complicated. The deepest reason probably is that they cannot tell what is happy appropriately in the society. As we all know, all the human emotions sprout from happiness. First, a baby needs to feel happy. Then, he or she will love something that causes the happiness, lose it, sad or angry, apart from it, missing or remembering. However, as the teeny tiny kids see a totally different world at first, the common sense of beauty and caring might not touch their heart at all. So, for example, if we saw such a picture about the butterflies, most of us might say, what lovely butterflies. But the teeny tiny kids, they will love the picture too, not because it is lovely. As to be tiny, it also be a gift, so that they could see the teeny tiny things forgotten or omitted by our adults. Some of them would be eager to tell the parts of the insects, of fore wings, hinder wings, antennae, thorax, and so on, while others might be studying the teeny tiny difference in the shades of green, mint, chartreuse, turquoise, and so on. They would be happy if we focus on the right thing that they really like. In fact, they're eager to learn just about their own true interest. But of course, it was not easy to guess out what they really like. Since we are watching the same thing, we see differently. Still, it's a children's book that gave me great help. It helped me out from the endless waiting and guessing. I just waited for my girl to hand me a book that she liked. Maybe the human body, the Roman numerals, or atomic structures. They're not the real science or math, of course. She likes them because they're so simple and perfectly logical. I'm very grateful to all these children's books, to everyone who had observed the world in such a different and dedicated way before us. And they recorded the difference by charming words or exquisite pictures, illustrations. In this way, these books became her first friends and tutors, which guided her way to the human world. Sometimes I think how lucky my daughter is. She just didn't have a chance to know that she's different, because there was always a book to satisfy her wildest curiosity. All her interests could be cherished, and all her questions could be answered. She was never lonely, still a little different, but she's very happy, and that is the most important thing for any child. And my third view, which is also the last, is the social and psychological support we can get from the children's book. To be frankly, I was benefited even more than my child. As we know, it is not easy to have a teeny tiny child and raise them well. So anytime when I feel lonely or hopeless, I got so much courage from the children's books, the real experts in children's thoughts and behaviors. No mention, they presented it in a most friendly way. They showed me a new world. It is all right to be different. Just slow down, expect less, cherish what you have now, and show endless tolerance to the people you love. So I really want to say it's the ending of the Asperger story, but not yet. My daughter is just 5 years old. She has a long, long way to go in such a big, big world. But she has learned to talk. She's happy. Still teeny tinier than her peers, obviously, but it has been much better than we expected. But there is just one more problem. That is, no matter how many times we try to teach her, she never says, I love you. We know that love is not something one could just see or touch or recite. The word itself is too complicated for her to understand. But then I know she has her own language about love, and she could express it just in a different way. Instead of love, she will say, I'm the gallbladder and mommy the liver. I'm the chlorine, mommy the sodium. And I'm Russia, mommy the St. Basil Cathedral. Yes, she's a very big fan of Russia. Maybe because it's the biggest country in her favorite world map. And I want to show something I made by myself that is from her Halloween party. She told me, I want to pretend to be Russia. So I made her this cape and I stitched a Russian map on it. I spotted the important cities of Russia so that she could realize her dream, even though that is wilder and than my wildest dreams. So let's come back to the story. But what was she talking about? Russia and St. Basil Cathedral. Thanks to the children's books as my dictionary, I gradually deciphered her language. She is talking about love in her own way. Because love could be the warmth that a little gallbladder might feel when snuggled under the big liver. Love is as strong as the bonding between two atoms. And love is the landmark rooted in our belief of the motherland. The children's books help us to understand each other, to build a bridge between the two languages and our two worlds. So thank you, all the writers, illustrators, translators, editors, and everyone who works in the children's book field. You are doing the greatest job, maybe without knowing it. You broaden the world that the child could see. You bring the words that they are seeking for, and that always soothes a mother's heart. And at last, I want to share with all the parents who might also have a teeny tiny child. Please take it just as a gift of life. Follow their interests, always searching for clues from free observing, reading, and learning. We better try to give them special training in language, as well as to understand their unique language. And most important, to love in such a way that could challenge our wildest imagination, just like what will happen in a best children's book. So, thank you all for listening. Please allow me to end my talk with a 10-second video which shows how my girl wears her Russian cape dancing at school. And thank you again for bringing such a miracle to me, my family, and the brilliant world. Thank you.
Линь-Цюань, спасибо большое за
Thank you very much, Lin Xuan, for your very informative and very interesting presentation. Do we have any questions to Lin Xuan? Hello, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation and topic. I have a question to you, if I may. Do you read with your daughter more like informative stories about how the world is arranged? Or do you read about people, about feelings that they sense, like friendship or something of that kind? What does she like more?
I have to say the answer might be a little bit different because it's really hard to put something in their brain as our wish. First, the most important thing is to make them interested in people. So we have to follow their interest. As my daughter, her favorite thing at first is numbers, and then periodic table, and then the plants, the plant classification. First, they need to have the habit to know that you can answer their questions, and then they will have the tendency to be friends with you and have the intimacy with people. And then maybe we can read some stories. Maybe we can read the simple stories. As she was 5, and I still read her the stories for very, very young to show them how the world is working. But that is a very, very slow precision. And her favorite book is still in the science and the orders. the most important thing is that she had already get the ability to read, to know the language, and that is a good start. That is my answer.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much.
Если вопросов больше нет,
So it looks like we do not have any more questions. So thank you very much, Lin Xuan. And now we will proceed with our next speaker, who will be Anna Godiner.
Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья.
Good morning, dear friends and colleagues. Let me start my presentation. I will speak alone today. My co-presenter is not here with us, but I would like to introduce us. My co-presenter is Anna Godiner. She's an antique scholar, and she is what we call in Russia an invalid of the first group from childhood. And I'm Anna Godiner. I'm curator in Russia on children's book, and I, for over 40 years, was a sibling of my sister with mental disabilities. That is why let us look at the world through the prism of children's books about people with disabilities in the 19th, 20th century Russian experience. But before we talk about the Russian experience, I would like to show you that we are together and we are included into the global space. Here you can see 3 IBBY catalogs about people with disabilities that have our books on them. And I'm really happy to see that. Well, sure, we sent larger collections, but it's great that these books were selected here. That is a cornerstone of my presentation, of our presentation, and I was really happy to hear about happiness from Lin Xuan just now. What happiness are we talking about in this topic? We would like to underscore it. So we were talking about the happiness of accepting ourselves and deserve love and equality, happiness from friendship, happiness to learn what you would like to learn, and happiness to be needed for both far and close. So that will be the cornerstone of our presentation. And here is the first point that we will begin with. As for the further details about all aspects of childhood in the first decade of the 21st century, they can be found in Cuates' book that is published in Children's Reading Almanac. And I would like to say that, quoting this book, children's aesthetics dictates certain interpretation of children with disabilities and body disabilities disabilities are perceived as a temporal and reversible phenomenon, and therefore, by the beginning of the 1990s, we had a paradigm of a person with disabilities as those who have to overcome something. And as for the previous period literature, there were not many numbers as compared to nowadays, and they were paradoxical. Heroism of overcoming, like any other heroism in nature, had a feature of exclusivity. It tended to be universal. On the one hand, it is a feature of unique people, but at the same time, that demands a heroic deed from all. The most well-known book, that is Boris Polevoy's novel about the true person, about Alexei Maresyev, that was included as a mandatory book for all schools in the Soviet Union, starting with the 5th grade. So that is 11, 12 years old children. And the title of this story shows that the true person is that person that has lost both legs, but is able to go back to life with other people on prosthesis. And it means that true person equals a hero, those who are able to overcome difficulties. That is obviously not the true whole picture, but any overcoming of any level might mean heroism as well. And we can see some remainings of this half a century later in Ruben Galiev, Black and White, published in 2002. I'm a hero. It is easy to be a hero. If you do not have legs or arms, you are either a hero or you are dead. I don't have any other choice. Is D'Artagnan a hero? What hero can he be if he had both legs and arms? He had it all. What is his heroism about? He is a friend who trades his friends for glory and something else. And I read this book without understanding half of it. I will live to the end. I will fight, slowly pressing clicking the buttons of my keynote, and thus making my book.
And yet another example, Yuri Yermolayev, another quite famous book, The House of Courageous Coward People. So when one of the teenagers joins an experiment where everyone is a winner. In the meantime, as a rule, there's no mirror reflecting the everyday life. First of all, the life of a family with a child, no field for inclusion. The social implies that there is no theme of defeat. So, in fact, there is no question about defeat of any degree, not only death, but also low spirits, insurmountable circumstances, how to live in such circumstances. So this is a question which has not been raised. In the early 21st century, we encounter a new text space that can be expressed. I will show you the world if you give me just one phrase. Where does this come from? The roots of this can be found decades ago when we entered the world space. The Iron Curtain was lifted, contacts with other countries, other societies where disabled people were integrated in the society. However, the new rhetoric of the text, both publicistic and didactic, at the turn of the 80s and 90s, the school children in Moscow were offered some subjects of the compositions. How do you understand charity? So as a response to this interest in people with disability. There's a paradigm of people, of special people. I will show you my special world if you want it. So, but sometimes this kind of desire requires courage. Number two, in the children's periodical literature, the theme and the new narrative that we are talking about has appeared 10, 15 years earlier, 1989, 93, in some newspapers for pioneers. We saw a regular column, I want to live. So every column was represented some children with disability, with some disorders, as those who need active support and as a personality right here and now expect for certain diseases that were sustained by his peers. So in the main children's magazines, mostly fiction stories were published, where heroes were children with disability, and the attention was drawn to children with oncological and cardiovascular diseases and those who were in wheelchairs. So it's no surprise that in the early 21st century, the first in the narrative world, I will show you the world in the fiction literature, was the hospital. I think it's quite well known in other space, the books by Nikolai Azarkin, and the Emerald Fish and Tangerine Islands, and also the book by Mashka as a symbol of faith. So this theme was repeated all the time. Please bear with me just 1 second. So the theme was repeated all the time. If you look at the slides, most on the cheek, and how in the world of hospitals, the teenagers manage to live and those who are around them. So the world of the hospital is portrayed from not from the medical viewpoint, but first of all, that's about relations, the relations among physicians, the parents. Well, the medical problems come second. The second world, its image can be built from the hospital narrative as a special character in school and family and the new social environment. So it's quite interesting. This is one of the cultural processes at the turn of the century. So especially in the focus of attention is the culture of everyday life, like, culturology, sociology, and the books about the everyday life of people are published, and the children's culture is the organic part of the larger culture. Family, hospital, socium is just life. The correction class by Ekaterina Murashova, the music of my woodpecker, by Ananyev. So these books that you can see here on the slide, these are all books that display the diversity of the everyday life. And the third of these worlds is the psycho-neurological boarding houses. These books can be read by teenagers and the first of these books was Ruben Gallego, White Against the Black Background, and Marianne Petrosyan, The House Witch. So the first book is just recollections of a person about his life, while The House in Which is a fiction book where in a huge boarding house, a mental house, some groups of adolescents live and they have their own world. So this book, in fact, when it was published, it became like an iconic book. It's been published many times, read by everyone, even by adults. And the last one is the Volunteers book. It's called She Came Down. It's a book about how a mother persuaded her daughter to start working as a volunteer in a mental institution where she befriended some people there who were patients of this mental institution. So I think this theme will be continued in our literature because it's highly important. So the next position we are talking about is that it was a kind of a discovery for the Russian audience, meaning books about siblings, brothers and sisters with disabilities as the main characters, on behalf of whom the author offers his narrative. But the novelty here Or we'll get back to the previous slides a bit later. So the novelty here is that neither in literature nor in society the siblings and their growth recently in the second half of the 20th century was not viewed as an autonomous life as a center of attraction, concentration of all resources. And here I've just collected the most interesting books where we have such siblings, brothers and sisters. It's mainly the narrative on their behalf, but it's quite interesting what happens there indeed. You know. Also, in the early 21st century, some non-fictional educational books about different disabilities, children with disabilities have appeared. These are the most interesting books which were written by a doctor, a mother, and writer. I included this book by Shatalova because it tells us about the world of a person with serious Asperger syndrome, autistic syndrome. Next, please. Now, another important issue is the characters with disabilities. The second plan is significant supporting characters in books, in school, in the society, and so on and so forth. The main characters think about internal and external obstacles to inclusive, holistic view of the world. And to certain possibilities of such a human being in professional terms. Here you can see the books with such kind of characters which force us to think and how this child was born in the family, how they met up with some special people outside, somewhere in the street, and how the world can change. So basically what we can say is right now the tone of the 20s and 30s, the books have changed the paradigm about children with disabilities and about such characters. The message is, I'll show you my world, and this narrative space, I can show you our special world, unusual world, where none of these realities have been smooth. And here, so the slides and the books about this. Here you can see the poem which was written by a Down syndrome child. So that's how we can talk about the inclusive literature and the trends of its development. These are the results of the development of this theme during the first decade of our century. What is especially important in this process is that the birth of the literature space, which can be adapted to the last Soviet times when we talked about the lack of certain books. Let me remind you about these themes: diversity in everyday life, inclusivity, inclusion, and how the victory is born. The footsteps foot traces left by people during their lives, and their narrative about the people who were next to them in school and in the family. The children's literature represent new, sometimes entirely new concept of understanding to the society, sometimes inability to change circumstances and even death, understanding of victory as a new experience for all characters in the book, a new understanding of the world and people around them. So we cannot overestimate such understanding for younger children, adolescents, teenagers. So thanks a lot, that's you see the title of the book when the character goes forward. Thanks a lot. Are there any questions to the speaker among the audience, please? May I ask you a question? Thank you very much for the presentation. Fortunately, I wasn't able to listen to it in full, but I'm happy that I managed to listen to the last part. I'm Varvara Korovin. I'm director of Association of Children for Inclusive Arts. So I'm really interested in what you are doing regarding your analysis of the books about children or adolescents with disabilities. That's really cool that you managed to display it all here. But can you tell me where can we take a closer look at this information? Are there any articles, any information so that people from theaters can better understand what kind of literature they can read on this subject? Yes and no. Some people from the theater communities have already asked me about these books, about the list of such books. Well, I can't tell you that there are some resources or any special information on that, but I can send you directly whatever I have right now, but the resource is still under design. Thank you very much. And now let's go over to the next presentation. The next presentation, Lucy Isabel from Mexico. The cerebral palsy, how to create a children's book from an anthropologist perspective. A book about cerebral palsy. Isabel, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Thank you.
Спасибо, спасибо.
I will share my presentation. Okay, well, here it is. Hi, my name is Lucia Jaime Rivela, Lucia Isabel. I'm a Mexican social anthropologist. Thank you so much well, for this space in IBBY. Thank you, IBBY Russia, IBBY International. And well, today I'm going to talk to you about this book that is called Cuates muy Cuates in Spanish. And I will talk to you about the process of the book. Well, I was telling Liu Linjuan when we started talking that Cuates muy Cuates, the word Cuates in Spanish means two things. Cuate in Spanish means friend, and Cuate is also the way we named two brothers that are well, born at the same time, but they are not twins. Okay, so these two characters were developed through a process from about a year. So we began on September 2018 when two women that had two different nonprofit organizations, and one that, well, Sonia specialized in giving jobs to people with disabilities, and Alicia gives therapy to children with sequels of cerebral palsy. So they approached to the Faculty of Philosophy, where is the degree in anthropology, and they were looking for two anthropologists to develop a book on disability, and well, to develop it together. No, they weren't looking for the anthropologist to take the total lead, but to coordinate this whole this huge like job. No, so on the beginning they weren't very sure which disability they wanted to develop on this children's book. And well, my partner, whose name is Karina, she's not here right now, well, and I had a very long interest in working together. Her research was focused on disability, and mine was focused on children and on books. Books as a cultural object, and as books as a tool for cultural change. So the project was like perfect for us. So when we became part of this project, we asked ourselves, why a book on disability for children? You know, and we saw that the organization that these two women had and our perspective were different. You know, for example, the association wanted to create a book about disabilities to make conscience on Mexican children about the subject, because they've seen through all the years working with different disabilities that children in Mexico are especially rude with children that are different. Something that is really common in Mexican culture is to mock, to give them names, to I don't know, to not make them part, but to be really mean with them during childhood. So they were really concerned about this social problem. And first they had like this idea of a children's book that was more like a manual to get into schools with crosswords and with exercises, And well, the intention was the same, but that in our perspective wasn't like a children's book. So we had to develop simultaneously two investigations, not on what is in Latin America, what are they writing in Latin America about disability, and how were we going to develop this book from the visual narrative, from the story, from even the way the characters are drawn, So another reason was that United Nations has been promoting children's rights and most of disabled kids or disabilities. So from an anthropological perspective, we begin to wonder, what does disability mean? For example, in Spain, they're not using disability anymore. They're using this term that is called like functional diversity. For example, in Mexico, discapacidad, that is the word that was commonly used to name, it is becoming a problem, because what happens with the concept is that it names the diversity or the group, but inside that concept, it just vanishes all the diversity in it. Like, for example, when you call someone indigenous and you just call him, he's indigenous people are like, no, I'm Mije, I'm Maya, I'm Otomi, So we started to see that from this perspective. For example, people that do not speak, they have this idea, and they defend that they have a cultural difference. That is that they do not speak, but they do have a language, and they use signs, they use gestures, but it's not that they are not included. It's that we as a society haven't decided to learn their language, and we began to think about, is it really a disability, or is the society that isn't integrating these cultural also diversities, And we also like to think, like in this children's metaphor, for example, there are creatures in Mexico that are called alebrijes, which are like dragons, but with different shapes. And we imagined of this story of an alebrije that lives in a city made of castles for scrapping for cats, So the alebrije won't fit in any door, and the cats would mock him, like, you can't fit into our doors, you can't fit into our windows. But then the problem is not the alebrije. The problem is that the city is not built for him. So we began to make all these questions, and then beginning from those questions, we started to question, what do Mexican children from different ages think about disability? What do they think when they hear that word? They have already built a concept on it. And the other reason was the importance of representation of diversity and gender in children's books. For most diversity. We also saw that, for example, in Latin American books, there isn't like a representation on different sizes of bodies, of different skin colors, and different abilities, if I may say so. So the process. First, while we were trying to find out which disability we were going to work with, we made field work in a school for blind children, and we make really interesting discoveries, like, for example, children that are born without seeing, they produce special sounds to locate themselves in spaces. The school had an idea that they weren't going to use the stick that they're normally used, but we saw that it was going to be really difficult to be there studying and observing the children, because also as an anthropologist, you can't just like be with the children and then move apart just for research. It wasn't like ethical. So we were trying to work with this. For example, here is Alicia, two other people from their association, and we decided to also, we had just a year to develop this book, so we focused on cerebral palsy because Alicia has a non-profit organization named El Tesoro de Mamá that works providing physical therapy. And well, this is because she herself has a son that now is a man that has sequels of cerebral palsy. So the development of the characters. This also, as anthropologists, we didn't want it to build a character from our imaginations. We aren't writers. We are not authors. We do not, our job is not to make children's books. It wasn't just a job. So we wanted the character to be real, we wanted to find out which message we wanted to give, and for whom. And there's where we started to look in, like, what are children's books saying in Latin America about cerebral palsy, And we wanted to give this character a voice. And so we choose 3 different men with different sequels of cerebral palsy. The first one was Fernando, that is the son of Alicia. And these interviews were focused on their childhood. So we asked Fernando, like, how was your childhood growing with cerebral palsy? For example, cerebral palsy, we know that with therapy, it can have, I wouldn't say like, it won't be like cure, but it has a development for different people with therapy. So Fernando went to not walking to start walking without the sticks that the drawing has. And he talked to us about his childhood and that he had always the support of his family, but one of his biggest dreams was to become a soccer player. Soccer in Mexican culture is really, really, really important. It determines even if people will go to work or it won't. It also has a really important rates in gender violence. I mean, it's really important, soccer, for Mexican culture. So there we saw an element, And then there was Samuel, who is a guy that works with Sonia. Well, yeah, a guy that works with Sonia, that is in his 20s with sequels of cerebral palsy. And he can make mechanical jobs, and he began speaking really clearly 3 years ago. So we also interviewed him about his childhood, and his desires on his childhood were to be part of a group, to have friends, to not be looked as a weird person. And then there was Hector, who's Emilio's brother, and he talked about the importance of reading Emilio. Emilio is one of Alicia's patients that has the most severe cerebral palsy. And so Emilio doesn't move, Emilio doesn't speak. So Hector gives us a perspective on his brother, on language, on observing, on love, you know, he said to us, like, I know that my brother likes this sort of music because he gets excited, and this connection between between two brothers give us another cultural element on Mexican society, that is the importance of family and family support. So this experience gives us a precious light, and then Alicia and Karina began to write a story with these cultural elements, that were developed in the equation. The importance of belonging, the physical aspiration, football as a crucial element in Mexican culture, and the importance in family in Mexican culture. So they began writing their story, and my job was to look for different books that talk about disability in a metaphorical way and in a concrete way. So I didn't find a lot of examples, but I found 3 that I'm going to talk about right now. The first one was from a student of the Universidad de Querétaro, that he made a book on cerebral palsy, but the first thing we saw was that the book had the word disability written 94 times in 64 pages. The book also, the narrative was really pitiful in a way that it made, like, when you were reading it, you were developing like a sort of pity for the character. And we saw that, and we didn't want to, first of all, we didn't want to use the word disability in any part of the book. And second of all, that wasn't what we really wanted to make the character. No, we didn't want it to make a pitiful character. We didn't want that. So that was an example for us to see what we didn't want to have. And then went to create. And then I found this amazing book that is called We Are Not Angels, that it's from a Spanish writer that is called Gosti, that has a son that has Down syndrome. And it's a very colorful and beautiful book because there's a saying in Mexico that Down syndrome children are like angels. It's a way, I don't know, it's a way to say in a kind of pitiful way to someone that their children is a blessing. So this book, it's amazing because the whole statement is that we are not angels, we are normal children, and treat us like normal children. And there's this other one that is called El Caso de Lorenzo, and the caso, I will translate it to English, is like this spot that he has. The character is Lorenzo, and Lorenzo is suddenly it appears that he has his spot that he carries everywhere, and he can't just leave it. And this spot makes his life way difficult because he has to carry, he stumbles with it. And there is a moment where Lorenzo gets really sad because that pot is like messing with his life. Then suddenly comes that has a pot like his, and tells him, hey, it's okay. There are also people out there with this spot. You don't have to be like worried about that. No, it's in a metaphorical way. He's talking about the difference that many people have, and how we need to, I don't know, talk about them and support people that have them. No. So then the other part of the process was to develop the storyboards with this whole group. No, the drawings behind are the drawings from Alicia, from Sonia, from these ladies of the organization. And I put these two images because they're important, because we wanted to illustrate like this relationship on the two brothers. So the whole book is about their relationship. And well, we also put like cultural elements, like the Day of the Dead. And there's this other page that they're like, they are to like looking to leaves, and you can see the text, but they say that they like to collect leaves because they're different and they're beautiful. No, that's a sort of metaphor to diversity, where we were like trying to put those like little elements that speak about the value of diversity. No. So then the work focused on finding a designer, the illustrator, and the writer for the rhythm of the story and the narrative. But later, there was another step of the process. And would children like this book, or was it just made from adults to adults, or to whom? So we developed a workshop with children. We got a fund from the university, and we selected special books that talk about different disabilities. And we make them like different activities that involved bending their eyes and reflect and asking them questions about how they felt not seeing. What do they think on people that have Down syndrome? Do they know someone like that? And it was a really interesting workshop, because, for example, we found out that children that were from 4 to 7 years that haven't had in school the subject of disability had ideas on disability that weren't physical. For example, we asked a girl like, what is disability for you? And she answered us, disability for me is not having money. And other girls said, disability for me is someone that won't vote for the same party as my parents. So, and when we asked, do you know someone that is disabled? They told us, no, we don't know someone disabled. But then when we showed them pictures of someone with Down syndrome, or we asked them, do you know someone that can't see? They said, oh yeah, I have an uncle that can see, or I have a cousin that looks like that. So we realized that children weren't like putting inside this box, this concept, in like we call it like this box of concepts, the diversity of people. No, they just saw it like, ah yeah, he can see. And for example, the children from 7 to 12 years, they already knew like, yeah, that's a disability and we have to respect them, and we have to, but it wasn't like a conscious empathy. It was like something learned, like something they were repeating. But it was really interesting seeing them, because there was a boy in that workshop that had I wouldn't say that it was a disability of a sort of autism or Asperger, because he wasn't like talking like right, you know. But then when we sit with him and I wrote what he was saying, I realized that the boy in real time was changing the syllables of the words. So this boy had developed his own language to communicate with people that he wanted to and that he didn't want it to. So when I came to this other girl, that they were like 5 years each, and I asked her, why do you think we can't understand Kenneth? And she told me, because you're not her real friend. And I said, well, that's interesting. So I wrote those words, and then I gained his confidence, and suddenly he like magically changed the syllables of the words, and he was like speaking like right, no? But then another adult came, and he magically changed the syllables of his words. So the children that repeated like this speech on disability, when the child tried to be their friend, they how do you say this? They just put him aside. So, and the other children that didn't have this speech just integrated the child. So other thing that we found really particular was like, for example, in this story that it's a drawing from a girl, she made a story about a dog that didn't have a leg. And we asked them to make a story about a dog that didn't have a leg. And the story says that the dog was really sad because he had one leg, and he found a gang of dogs that stole a piece of metal from a bicycle and put him a leg, and so they were really happy together as friends. So, and then simultaneously we were finishing the book to show that book to the children, and there came this image that was really controversial for us as anthropologists, because it's the boy dreaming that he's part of the football team and that he's going to play a really important game. But in the real images, he's playing with his sticks. But in this image, he's dreaming that he isn't running with them. So it was a really controversial image from an anthropological perspective, because in the first place, we weren't trying to put again normality in what is supposed to be, no. But then we came to realize to people with cerebral palsy, like, I know that from an anthropological perspective, it's not what it's supposed to be, but we do dream that we can talk without those sticks. And it was a really interesting conversation, because it was like, do you dream that because of what society tells you to dream, or because you really, really, really want that? No. So it was a huge controversy. The image stayed like that in the book, in the final book. And well, so in the end, we put this book to children. The children loved it. In the end, we played a very fun soccer game. And how was anthropology on this job, on this entire job? I think the first element on anthropology was that anthropologists aren't supposed to talk for themselves. We didn't want it in the first place to make a story on our imagination, on what we had researched, on what we had read. We wanted to actually rescue the lives. I mean, this character Dan is made of 3 men and 3 childhood experiences, and we had to put aside our analysis and our criteria and our theories and actually put the characters in the pages of the book. Also, there was a really interesting job with the organizations because they also had like different ideas on how a book should look like. For example, like I told you, this image of the dream was one of these controversial parts of the process. But in the end, what we wanted to achieve was that there's a real character in this book. We do not just took it from someone that has not like been through something like that. It was really the experience of someone that has sequels of cerebral palsy. So that's it. Well, this is the last page of the book. It says, children with cerebral palsy want to be included and to be part of a group. These phrases are made of those three men. We want to be accepted as we are. We don't want to be seen with pity, and we want to be treated as everyone else. So thank you, IBBY, and well, that's the story of this process.
Isabel, спасибо большое.
Thanks a lot, Isabel, for a very interesting presentation indeed. Now we have a short break and we'll try to start on time, to restart our time. Same room. Yeah, thank you.